guys, it's Brooke with SupertutorTV. Today, I'm going to give you some tips on the SAT writing and language test. This is like half of the reading comprehension section on the SAT if you guys for some reason aren't that familiar with the SAT, but I think a lot of you probably are because you're hanging out here and getting more tips. We're going to go through 3 awesome strategies for this section. Are you ready? Before we get going, subscribe to our YouTube channel. All you have to do is click subscribe. It's super awesome, super fun. And go to our website and also subscribe to our mailing list. It's supertutortv.com/subscribe. And without further ado, number 1, know what you're being tested on. So maybe this is obvious, but one of the keys to really getting things right on this test is to know what you're being tested on and then respond to that accordingly. Basically, there's a bunch of grammar rules that this tests, and there's also a bunch of types of questions that it tests. And what you have to know is what's the strategy that I employ with every type of question. Especially for the grammar questions, this is super vital, and it's also pretty simple. What I can do to try to figure out what's being tested is I can compare my answer choices, and then I'm going to respond accordingly after I figure out what is being tested. So here I can compare my answer choices. I can see like a split down the middle. It's either occur or occurs, and then over here we're testing is it is or they are. Okay, so those are the 2 things being tested. I can break that down a level further because I know the grammar. I know this is a verb, occur versus occurs, and that means it's either going to be subject-verb agreement or verb tense. This is probably subject-verb agreement because occur and occurs are both in the same tense, present tense. So it's going to be subject-verb agreement. So I'm going to go find the subject that goes with occurs. We have when any one of these changes occur. So here's the deal. When I have a prepositional phrases start with things like of, I ignore them. So that means I'm ignoring this part that I just highlighted in blue here. And my subject is actually just the word one. When one occur. That sounds pretty bad, so I know it's going to be occurs. It's got to be C or D. You see how I do this? Then I look at the next half and I say, is it they are or is it is? Well, that's called pronoun agreement. I have to figure out whether I need a they or an it. So let's read this whole sentence and we're going to figure out whether it's going to be the it or the they. When any one of these changes occur, it or they are likely the result of careful analysis conducted by transportation planners. So here's what we have to figure out. What is likely the result of this careful analysis conducted by transportation planners? Well, I think probably what the result of the careful analysis is the changes, right? We make changes after the transportation planners analyze something, and then we know what's going on. But here's what's confusing. I have both one, which is singular, and I have changes, which is plural, right? And I have it, which is singular, and I have they, which is plural. So that's really why this is so confusing, because both of those words seem kind of viable. And here's the rule of thumb that I would generally say for these kind of sentences. Generally, if possible, if I'm sorted between 2 things, I want to go with what the subject was in the first half of the sentence and make that the subject in the second half of the sentence if it's referenced by a pronoun. So what I mean by that is because 1, remember how we crossed off the of these changes earlier to see the subject-verb agreement? Well, I'm going to do the same thing to try to hone in on this pronoun agreement because ideally my best, cleanest structure is going to be having the subject of the first half of the sentence be the thing that the pronoun in the subject position in the second half of the sentence refers to if I can. And that's just because it creates this really clean structure. The exception to this rule would be if we're using a word like which or that, but that's another story. And I come to the conclusion that the one is what the it is referring to. So it is what we're looking for. So therefore, I know the answer is D. Woohoo! Okay. But what this comes down to is in my process of solving these problems, if I know what's being tested, I can be super efficient in the way that I address this. I know really quickly that this is about pronoun agreement and subject-verb agreement. How do I know that so quickly? Because I'm a tutor and I know these things. You probably don't know that so quickly, but you can learn it. And so learning all the grammar rules, learning all these little like kind of things and coming up with patterns for yourself, you can do that through exposure to these tests. You can do it through getting some prep guides and learning from them. There's a second half to this though, because sometimes you're being tested on things that aren't totally clear. So let's take a look at one that's not totally clear. And the ones that aren't totally clear are often a little fuzzier and they have question stems and they're more complicated, and these are usually the hardest problems on the test. These are going to be harder to just learn to do from a grammar guide, okay? The first kind of question, man, you should be able to nail all of those by getting a grammar guide, figuring out what's wrong, and addressing it. Doing that over and over again is going to really help you guys out. So for these, I actually take a different approach. This one is just a keep or delete, right? The writer's considering deleting the underlined sentence. Should the sentence be kept or deleted? This doesn't tell me what the grammar or style rule is. It just asks me, is it appropriate? If not, why should I get rid of it or why should I keep it, right? Tell us back the grammar rule. So if I want to know whether I'm going to keep or delete 8, what I'm actually going to do, because I don't know what's being tested, rather than just look here, and I might look there if I get stuck, I'm going to look back here and try to find the perfect answer and then get it to match up. I'm going to try to figure out what's being tested by looking at the context, figuring out what's wrong with it, identifying what the test is testing from my own instincts. So that's how I like to usually do these. And the best way to do that is to go back and read the whole paragraph. So let's do that together right now. Transportation planners work closely with a number of community stakeholders, such as government officials and other interested organizations and individuals, representatives from a local public health department. So this is one group of people from these community stakeholders, right? Might provide input in designing a network of blah, 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 blah to encourage people. So I'm skipping over this a little bit, you can see, because I'm looking at the structure of this. I'm looking at what fits into this paragraph. This is my topic sentence. If this fits, it should fit with my topic sentence, right? According to the American Heart Association, walking provides numerous benefits related to health and well-being. So this really feels out of place to me, just instinctually. This seems to be all about transportation planning and the steps to planning new transportation routes. And this is just randomly about how walking is healthy. Then we have members of the Chamber of Commerce might share suggestions about designing transportation and parking facilities to support local businesses. Again, do you see how these people work into this idea of community stakeholders? Do you see that? Here in this sentence, I have human beings in the community and they work into this idea. This sentence, though, seems like a random fun fact about the healthiness of walking. So I think that's totally randar and it should be deleted. So I'm going to look for deleted because it's random. Because it blurs the paragraph's focus on community stakeholders with whom transportation planners work. Yes, that seems to be what it's about, but I'm going to read D also. I never just go with one answer. I always read everything possible. Delete it because it doesn't provide specific examples of what the numerous benefits of walking are. But who says we have to provide specific examples, right? Usually because it doesn't, these answers on the SAT are usually wrong. Anyhow, but you see how I see what's being tested, and what's being tested is randomness. And I figure that out by going to the paragraph, looking for the perfect answer, and then matching it up. So that's how I do something like this. But you can see how this is harder because I have to know what's up to get it right a little bit more versus being able to just look at the answer choices, see the differences between them, and go really quickly. Tip number 2, when in doubt, compare your answer choices. I know I talked about this a little bit in the last one, but a good technique when you're stuck or when you don't know what the answer is compare your answer choices. See if there's a difference between them. Try to figure out how one is different from another or what one has above the other. So sometimes I'll read something and it sounds grammatically correct, but I don't quite know what's wrong with it. Here, current road as it is designed at this time. Current design of the road right now. So what I could do actually with my pencil, if I had a pencil, I could cross off all the words that are the same, like current road, and see what the difference is. The only difference between B and A that I see is at this time versus right now. And when I think about it, both of those mean exactly the same thing. Sure, one is 3 words and one is 2 words, but they both mean the same thing. And I'm like, are those even distinct answer choices? Those sound about equivalent. If I find 2 that are about equivalent, they're probably both wrong. Road as it is now currently designed, or current design of the road. So this one, I'm going to say all A, B, and C are about the same. D is the same too, except that it has fewer words. And when I think about it, current means the same as right now. So you see how by looking at the answer choices and the differences, I can kind of hone in on the wording. That's the redundant wording. In any case, it's a good clarifying step. Again, that was also one of the steps that I was doing when I was identifying the problems, remember? On that last one. So these two kind of go together, knowing what you're being tested on and comparing your answer choices. They're both sort of vital little skill sets that you're going to be using on this test. Cool. My tip number 3 is read when you need. One of the things that I would say is some tutors will tell you to read the whole passage before you start any of the questions on the writing and language section. I don't necessarily think you need to do that on this section. If you really like doing that, hey, more power to you if you love that. But my motto in this section is read when you need. It doesn't mean never read. Trust me, it does not mean never read. If you never read the passage, you are likely to get yourself in trouble, and I have a lot of students who do that and they get themselves in trouble. Another mistake that students make is when they don't read the whole thing first and they just jump question to question is oftentimes they don't read enough. So when do you need to read? That's the question. Well, I'm going to tell you. You need to read them on placement questions. That's where should this sentence go? What order should these be in? You need to read them on structure questions, which is which one of these creates a similar parallelism to the other sentences. We're going to look at one of those right now. And you need to read them when you have keep or delete or transition words. Whenever you have those kind of problems, that's all about the context. You've got to read up and down until you have a thorough understanding of things. And oftentimes that means reading whole darn paragraphs, okay? To understand the structure of these SAT passages, you've got to read a little bit more. You can't just read one sentence at a time. That being said, for like easy grammar questions where you're just looking at subject-verb agreement or pronoun agreement, you don't have to read everything. So that's why my motto, read when you need. Okay, so number one, it says, which choice best maintains the sentence pattern already established in the paragraph? Well, in order to figure out the sentence pattern already established in the paragraph, duh, we have to read earlier in the paragraph. A subway system is expanded to provide service to a growing suburb. A bike sharing program is adopted to encourage non-motorized transportation. Do you see the parallelism? Noun is something ed to something, right? Noun is something ed to something. Over here, noun is something ed to something. There it is. See how I can pick up the pattern? I can't pick up the pattern if I don't read it. So make sure you've read enough. And if you get stuck on anything that's more rhetorical strategy based as opposed to just straight up grammar rule based, remember, it probably comes down to you need to read a little bit more context. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it helpful. If so, please give this video a thumbs up. Go check out all of our other skills videos for the SAT. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You should also go check out SupertutorTV.com. We've got a complete ACT prep series of awesomeness that you can go check out. We have free SAT resources. We have blogs. We have lots of awesome stuff. So go check it out and watch more videos. I will see you guys next time on SupertutorTV. Take care and good luck on your test.